Rex, we are not off to a good start this year, are we? So first of all, happy Fujoshi February. Although, is it really a happy Fujoshi February? So if you haven't heard, the 10 count movie is canceled, but not in like a whiny internet way, like in a literal way. So basically, to catch you up, if you don't know what I'm being emotional with my body pillow over, 10 Count is a wildly popular manga that was published in Japan in the Dear Plus BL magazine from 2013 to 2017. And in 2018, it was announced that it was going to have an anime adaptation. Later in 2019, it was announced that it was going to be a television anime adaptation that was slated to come out in 2020. Then 2020 happened. And of course, anime delays was not like a 10 count only thing in 2020. It literally affected everything. But then we didn't hear literally anything for 2 years, whereas everything else that got delayed, if it was delayed, it got a delay announcement. 10 count was just like, hey, you're still there? And it apparently was, because I remember distinctly it wasn't like a big news update thing, but there was random update on the 10 count website, just kind of being like, hey, we're still here. But again, 2 years passed, and later in 2022, at the tail end of 2022, 10 Count was announced that its adaptation was now going to be a movie adaptation instead of a TV series anime adaptation. We got the first and only poster and character visuals of the story that we ever got, and it was announced to come in 2023. And then 2023 happened, and 10 Count didn't happen. And now, in January, when I'm recording this, it's been revealed that the 10 Count movie has completely just essentially been, like I said, canceled. And so are our hopes and dreams. I think I've said this in the last video I talked about 10 Count, but when 10 Count was first announced, it was like one of 3 major BL anime announcements, in 2018, like 3 days in a row. Like 10 Count was one day, the next day or the day before it was Yarichin Bibu, the day before or after that was Dakaichi. Like, that never happens. What's even more crazy is that, like, in 2018, I also remember, like, Six Lovers was announced. If you don't know what Six Lovers is, Six Lovers was basically a fan DVD, a fan disc, if you will, a single OVA episode from the Dear Plus magazine to celebrate its anniversary, where it had 6 different short episodes, like, I want to say, like, maybe 4 minutes each, and one of those being 10 Count. So I remember there being, like, a whole conundrum. A lot of people were saying, oh yeah, 10 Count's gonna have an anime, and Six Lovers is gonna have an episode of 10 Count, but a lot of people also interpret it to be like, no, like, this means that, like, the 10 Count anime adaptation is in Six Lovers. And then as promo rolled out, we learned that 10 Count was getting its own separate anime adaptation, but hilariously, ironically, it turns out that Six Lovers was the only anime adaptation. 10 Count was wildly popular when it published. It was like a best-selling manga when it first came out, like hugely popular. It's also by the same mangaka who wrote 7 Days. 7 Days, of course, being another popular BL manga, also being fairly well known for being plagiarized for a gay Western novel. Side note, I just need like my fellow Rainbows to like collectively get it together. Because we keep having this recurring theme of plagiarism and someone wanting to depict accurate queerness, and then BL being mixed up in the midst of it. Like, I don't know why this is hard. You're talking about accurate experiences. Is it not your experience then? Then why are you plagiarizing? Hashtag secret straits. But anyway, just another measure of how popular 10 Count was is also the fact of the amount of figures that it got. 2 Nendoroids, 2 Bunny Boy 1/8 scale figures, and like a cast-off native figure. As like a metric, Junjo Romantica, which again, wildly popular, has a manga and an anime adaptation, only has 2 Nendoroids. Given has 4 Nendoroids for the 4 main characters of the story. Therapy Game only has a manga adaptation, but that has 2 Nendoroids. And then Dakaichi is probably the closest, aside from like Dramatical Murder, but Dramatical Murder is a whole other beast. They also had 2 bunny figures, but also had 2 Nendoroids, but they didn't have a cast-off figure like 10 Count had. And again, 10 Count had all of this based solely off of a manga adaptation. They saw it was lucrative, and it is lucrative if you look at the aftermarket prices, and the re-releases, but it was incredibly lucrative for them to release 10 Count figures, to make them, put them in production, and to, you know, sell them to the people. So like, it's at the forefront of my mind. Again, like when we're talking about delays, we're talking about 2020, we're talking about the state of BL, which we will get to in a second. If 10 Count was as popular as it was and 10 Count got canceled, what in the f does that mean for Twittering Birds Never Fly Movie 2 or literally anything going forward? And I mean, not to be alarmist, but it's YouTube. All we do on this platform is be alarmist. We love facts and logic on this platform as well. This may not be Dude Bro Shonen 2, but we like facts and logic here too. Out of curiosity, I decided to look at the amount of adaptations since 2020, and I noticed that there is a gradual decline. So here's kind of the total number and the names of all the BL that has come out since 2020 to this year. Also, I'm going to be including Danmei because like the two go hand in hand at this point. I very much consider the two two distinct things, but there is overlap because there's men loving men. It is what it is. So in 2020, there were 11 BL anime adaptations: Marudase Kintaro, Yes Ka no Ka, Hanmon Ka, Umibe no Étranger, some horny-looking BL Isekai short series that I couldn't find personally, but would love to. The Given movie, Titan's Bride, Minagishi-san, which was a short series, Sekaiichi Propose Hen, Sayazuru Movie 1, Zhiyao, and Heaven Officials Blessing Season 1. So we had 11 anime in spite of the that's like in 9 months, because the pandemic really took like 3 months out of the year if we're being real about it. But in the 9-month year that was 2020, we got 11 BL anime adaptations in varying degrees, and also including Danmei. In 2021, the year after, we only got 9 anime adaptations. The Given OVA, Dakaichi Spain Hen movie, Night Beyond the Tri-Cornered Window, Evologia, Kurogal, Sayazuru OVA, Six Lovers, Heaven Officials Blessing Special, which was a single episode, and Modao Zusha's final season. So 9. Also, I think I forgot to include Scum Villain, Scumbag, whatever the I call it SKA because of its acronym. I don't know when that came out, but I don't remember if that came out in the past few years, so that's not included in this, so maybe that bumps up one of the years. But again, the point I'm making is 2020 was 11, 2021 was 9. And in the past 2 years, 2022 and 2023, there has only been 8 adaptations. There's been Masked Danshi, Mignon with an asterisk, because again, it's a Korean production, Mori no Kuma-san, Heaven Officials Blessing Season 2, and 4 installments of Sasamiya. Who asked for that? Not I! So collectively between 2020 and 2021, there was a total of 20 BL anime adaptations, including Danmei adaptations. And between the past 2 years of 2022 and 2023, there's only been 8. And even if we take out the Danmei, which I think it ended up being 2 per season, that's what, 9 specifically BL anime adaptations in 2020 and 7 specific BL anime adaptations in 2021, which makes in the last 2 years, if we take out Heaven Officials Blessing and Mignon, if we want to take out the Korean, that means there's only been 6 in the past 2 years. And 4 of which have been Sasamiya. And in terms of announced that have not yet come to fruition or are scheduled to come out this year so far, we have the Given movies, Shin Yaranai Ka, asterisk, because watch my video on that announcement of that adaptation. Also, it's a Geiko me, it's not BL, but again, overlap if we're talking about media specifically depicting romantic relationships between men, although again, more asterisks because it's Shin Yaranai Ka in that whole crowdfunding situation. I don't want to get into it. Tadaima Okairi, which is coming out later this year, Tasogare Out of Focus, Atekuse, which is the BL from Anime Festa that I mentioned before, which apparently has like officially been announced. It has my anime list page at least, and the second Sayazuru movie, which again is in limbo because what is going on with Blue Links? I think they're doing the Given movies, but I don't know what else they're doing besides that. And then, of course, this season Cherry Magic is airing, but I believe I will be talking about Cherry Magic in my next video, so I won't harp on that too much. In terms of things that currently are existing and things that are scheduled to be coming out, like, I'm not thrilled. I'm overall not thrilled with the current state of BL. And so 10 Count getting canceled is just, like, another, like, blow to, like, my enjoyment and my interest. And I think, like, that's kind of emblematic in, like, the kind of content that I've made over the past few years. A lot of y'all have come to this channel because I have covered, and I continue to try to cover, BL over the years. But again, like, while a lot of Fujoshi and BL fans, Fujins, Fudanshi, whatever you want to call yourself, just a BL fan, a lot of people who consume BL are, like, all or nothing. Like, their goal is to, like, read or watch all BL. That is not mine. BL I can personally consume pretty much like I consume any other genre. Like, it's not about the genre, it's about, like, what are the specifics of the story itself. So, like, I'm not just gonna watch something personally because it's BL, as y'all know by now, probably, based off of certain series that I have purposely avoided. The last 3 BL animated adaptations of any kind that I was genuinely excited for, Twittering Birds Never Fly series, which I ended up watching the movie and became even more invested in it than I already was from just, like, seeing a poster and being like, oh, this looks sexy. Zhiyao, super surprise hit, absolutely love it, highly recommend it. And Sekaiichi Propose Hen, which was kind of a bit of a slight disappointment. I would prefer a season 3. Hopefully we can still maybe one day get a season 3. Those all, I think, came out in 2020. Yup. They all came out in 2020. 2020, the pandemic of 2020 was apparently BL. 10 Count for me personally was probably the last BL anime adaptation that was announced that I personally, at this point in time, of course, things can always change. Someone could decide to adapt Complex by Mandaringo tomorrow and I would be over the rainbow. But, like, 10 Count was probably the last, like, officially announced BL anime adaptation that had been announced that I was really excited for. All the other ones that I had been excited for had already come and gone, and, like, everything else that's been announced, I've been like, oh, maybe I'll pick it up. Like, Tasogare Out Focus, I don't think there's an oven there, but Tasogare Out Focus, I probably will watch. It seemed interesting enough, although Yuma Uchida's in it, probably playing an uke. It's just like his type. Adakuse, I'm interested because it's Anime Festa. If it's Anime Festa, it's of course I'm gonna watch it. And Saizuru 2, I will hope for, but again, I don't have any hope for, especially after this 10 count debacle. So literally, I've been left high and dry when it comes to BL adaptations. The other thing that I feel like when it was first announced to be a movie is that a lot of people weren't thrilled with the studios behind it. It was Synergy SP and East Fish Studio, which I also had never heard of them at the time, and so I was slightly concerned in terms of like what the quality of the film would be. And I think a lot of people, because it wasn't MAPPA or like Studio Dean or like Kyo Annie or like any like of the Bones, any like studio that absolutely probably would never have adapted this in the first place, because they weren't behind it. People were like, oh, they're concerned about the quality of it now. In the time since then, I've actually watched a few series that were animated by these studios. Kaito Queen wa Circus ga Oski, absolutely recommend it. Non-binary lead. It's a short OVA. They have a second one coming soon, hopefully. I'm excited for it. Highly recommend it. Beyblade Metal Saga, which is not the Beyblade. This is Beyblade, Let It Rip, if I remember correctly. And then they did the final seasons of Initial D, because Initial D literally had a different anime studio every single season of its entire run. So I will say, it still is not... I think the thing about this is, like, there are two other things that I've been waiting for that have had a slightly longer wait time. Ice Adolescence, which we will wait for ever. And the Token Ranbu movie. Probably waiting for an anniversary or something, but it was announced in 2017 from what I recall. And Ice Adolescence, I think, also announced in 2017. And just MAPPA's like, we don't want to do it because it's not going to make us money, because you know we like to exploit and make money. But anyway, when it first came out, I was like, we riot at dawn. But I will say, I'm a lot less angry than I think I would have been if this was a year ago. Literally, if it was a year ago that this was announced that it was getting canceled, I would probably be a lot more angry than I am now. And so there's three things that basically are why I'm not as mad as I am about 10 count being canceled. The first one is, again, how long we've had to wait. Like, it's been 6 years. Again, this is not the longest wait I've had to do for something, although I will say this was probably more tumultuous than the Token Ranbu movie. At least, like, the Token Ranbu movie gives us, like, a new poster once a year. Ice Adolescence is just like, we've given up at this point. This, it was like, okay, they brought us back, and they yanked it out, but again, like, we've already had to wait. So I think all of us were a little jaded. The second is if we didn't already experience Six Lovers. Because to be honest, like, I'll actually be talking about 10 Count's manga in a second. I was excited off of 10 Count because I love Rihito Takurai's art. She's drawn some like Fate Go promotional imagery, I believe, over the years, and I've seen that, and that's always looked really good. But then when I met the characters in Six Lovers, I think I said this at some point over the past few years, but I was not as into their dynamic or characterization as I would have liked to been. I do want to see it more fleshed out because this Six Lovers shit is a disaster, but from what little I saw, if I was like pulling like little bits out of it, I wasn't completely thrilled. And the third reason as to why now in January 2024 I'm not as mad about 10 Count being canceled is because Bang Bravern is airing. I highly recommend. Oh, because it is just giving me so much that 10 Count likely maybe could have or couldn't have given me. But anyway, I say all of this to say that since we're not getting a 10 Count anime, I might as well read the manga. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go read the manga of 10 Count. I'm not going to vlog it chapter by chapter. I'm kind of overdoing that in general. Well, except for maybe a few other things I might squeeze in at the end of the month or at some point this year, but TBD in terms of how inflammatory I want to be. By the way, at the time of this recording, I literally have not read a single chapter, so I'm literally going into it fresh. I have no idea what to expect at this point, except for like what I generally know of the dynamic to see if that is even the same. Coming out of this, will I be like, am I pissed that we were robbed of this adaptation? Or will I be like, you know what, it's for the best? TBD, I'll be back in a second. Step one, walk through that door. Literally. He's not like he was before. Finish that coffee, you wasteful. 3, spread your Step 4, free response. And then there's 6 other ones, and they don't even go in order, so what was the point of the order? So obviously there's going to be manga spoilers going forward, so you've been warned at this point in time. So in regards to the movie being canceled, I would say that my perception of it has shifted a little bit. I will say I am still fundamentally upset about us not getting a 10 count anime adaptation in any way, shape, or form. Although I will say that after reading it now, first of all, I did not realize 10 count is only like 6 volumes. Like, it's a really short series. A movie might actually, in my opinion, be the best format for this story. It's not a story that's full of fluff. It's not a story that is really, there's a lot going on that you don't really care about, but I think the story could definitely be trimmed in ways to fit a movie format, especially if it's a movie on the longer side. Like, an hour-long runtime is not enough. At least an hour and 1.5, if not a full 2, or like a 145, I think would be nice, because I think there are definitely things that could potentially be cut out, and I think a lot of things could be condensed. I knew what 10 count was about going into it. I knew about what misophobia was, but it didn't click until I like actually read it and saw like how viscerally of a germaphobe that he is, that I feel like part of why this initially got delayed from 2020 as opposed to like having a later release in the year like so many other things is that in the throes of COVID world, 10 count would not have gone over well. I don't think anybody would have wanted to see that, where there was like death outside, or in the initial stages of 2020 and like we don't know like all the facts about like what spreads COVID, how COVID spreads. We're wiping down groceries, like hospitals are filled. Like 10 count was not the anime adaptation that 2020 needed. So like it being delayed from 2020 because of COVID and because of like so many things like within Shirotani and how he exists within the story. Like he wears gloves all the time. Like he actually doesn't wear masks as often. So I feel like that's not as viscerally of a COVID related thing within the story. Although there is times I think when he is sick. Again, when he comes home, he like takes everything off like one layer at a time and he leaves it all at the front of his house. So like when he's in his house, like he feels like it's perfectly clean and shit. And like he washes his hands so much that like his hands bleed because it's so dried out. And like I think a lot of us remember like hand sanitizer is everywhere and we're all wiping our hands, and like sometimes wiping it so much so if you're like being extra cautious, at least for me, I can't speak for everybody. Some of y'all are probably COVID deniers, but let's not get into it. Using hand sanitizer so much that it's causing your hands to chafe, it's causing you to bleed because like your hands are so dried out and shit. And like Shirotani is experiencing that on a daily basis. So there's just like a lot of aspects of the story that really felt very COVID adjacent. And so I feel like 2020 was not the year when like people are like diving into anime and just like media in general as a distraction from all the like death going on outside. Like a 10 count would not have been an escape for anybody. And I don't think any production team would have wanted to take that on. No anime studio, no network television would want to have like a COVID adjacent boys. And again, boys love manga. So like you have the added thing of homophobia on top of it and misogyny. Nobody's going to want to take that on in the midst of a global pandemic. My perception of things from Six Lovers was, I'll say, just straight up wrong. From what I understand as I was consuming the story is that there's lots of like extra chapters, and a lot of the extra chapters to me felt out of character. They felt the characters weren't like not completely out of character, but it like tweaked the characters to have personalities that were like almost parodies of themselves, and it didn't feel like the actual characters being themselves. And so in of that, the Six Lovers did like Kurose lying about being an android to Shirotani is like some like really like not that funny comedy thing. Like it just wasn't as funny as I think I thought it was. I was like concerned about like their dynamic and like how they presented themselves because of how that single episode / extra chapter portrayed them, and like that very much wasn't their portrayal throughout the course of the story. So I was grateful that Six Lovers was wrong in essence. And quite frankly, I didn't care for a lot of the extra chapters, especially because I was just really trying to like finish and like complete the whole story in a day. So like I ended up skipping a lot of the extra chapters because I just didn't particularly care. I didn't like how it characterized them half the time. Can we get back to the main story, please? Part of me is glad that this didn't get adapted simply because it contains a trope that is like probably literally the only trope I don't particularly care for as a recurring trope within specifically BL manga. Ueda as a character is like, she's this girl who was apparently around with Shirotani's dad growing up. She's like the reason why like he has like all his we'll get into Shirotani later as a character, and why he has like his misophobia, his like self-hate, as we learn, is because largely because of her, because she was sleeping with his father and she didn't like him because he was the father's son. Clearly felt rivalry with the man's son, even though that's very much not, at least in my interpretation, though Shirotani wasn't like attracted to his father. He just like, we don't know what's going on with the mother, which again is like a whole other thing related to this. Shirotani was really, really attached to his father, which is like some children are. So like Shirotani being really drawn to his dad, like we don't know like the other aspects of his upbringing. He just really loved his dad, so he always wanted to be with his dad. And she didn't like him always being with his dad because again, she's written to be detestable just to be detestable, because it's a recurring thing with NBL female characters who are like literally written just to be hated, whether because they're like in the way of the couple or like because they're just literally like they just suck. And it's also like a common trope I would say also within like isekai, especially like Shield Hero comes to mind. Again, I always have to talk about this and like explain it in detail, unfortunately, but like the way BL is marketed, again, like the truth and how things are marketed are not the same thing, but the way BL is marketed is that it's manga depicting men in relationships or romantic by women for a female audience. It's just always fascinating that like within this thing that is allegedly across the board by women for women, that the women are always like a lot, not all the time, but a lot of the time there are female characters who are specifically despicable just to be despicable. Like there are plenty of cases where female characters are in the story and they're not despicable. Sekaiichi Yasukoi specifically comes to mind because I'm thinking of Ritsu's childhood friend slash fiance, because she just really likes him, but she's not detestable. Like she just is there to like act as some sort of like, she's a plot device in essence, but she's not written detestably. Like you feel bad for this girl and stuff like that. Whereas here, like Ueda is just like despicable to be despicable. Like she's perceiving this guy Shirotani like liking his father and being really attached to his father is like in the way of her trying to get at his father. She's just a disaster. And then she comes back and I was like, no, why did she come back? The thing is like, not only because like I don't like her as a character and she's not supposed to be liked as a character, she's supposed to be disliked. I don't look forward to like any excuse for people to find an excuse to be misogynist. You know what I'm saying? Like, there are plenty of people who consume BL who are misogynists, whether they're queer men or not. These characters appeal to those people because they hate women in real life, and so, like, it's an excuse in order for someone to be misogynist. And so, I just am kind of partially glad this was canceled ultimately because, like, we wouldn't have to deal with Ueda. We wouldn't have to deal with Riko Kurosei's mother, who is, like, literally stupid just because she's a woman and a housewife, and, like, apathetic just because, like, she cares too much about, like, buying things. Like, it's just, like Rihito Takurai. From what I understand, you're a woman. Why do you hate women? I don't understand it, but it is what it is. I'm still sad this was canceled. I still wish that we could have still gotten this as an adaptation in some way, shape, or form, maybe hopefully down the line. It's just, there's too many things, I think, post-pandemic that are inhibiting 10 count from manifesting. Then at the same time, I'm also kind of glad because I still look forward to any BL story where it specifically depicts like a woman or multiple women or all its women or just even some of the women in a way where it's like an excuse for the audience to be like, she's a you know what I mean? Like, the kind of people who thought, like, mine having her name renamed to and, like, Shield Hero was like, oh, yeah, got her, bro. Out of here. I give 10 count an 8 out of 10. Net enjoyed it. I will say I definitely was not enthralled in the characters themselves. Like, Shirotani and Kurosei, like, I didn't get emotional, I think, not once in the story. I think, like, again, like, an anime adaptation would benefit it with, like, music and, like, seeing, like, just these things revisited, whereas, like, I was kind of binging it to get through it. My main takeaway from this, and again, another reason why I am upset that it is canceled as an anime production as of right now, is that this has all, like, the tropes and the trappings of, like, traditional BL that I appreciate. What's the list? Clothes on first fondling scene, a jealousy arc, the seme confessing first and being like very headstrong and like they're liking the uke, whereas like the uke is more conflicted and confused, often a tsundere. I wouldn't necessarily, Shirotani is somewhat of a tsundere, but he's not like an aggressive tsundere. He's more like a more subdued tsundere, a subdued dere. I feel like this is like a type of BL story that has been missing from anime adaptations for quite a while now. Like Sayazuru is on like the more explicit side of BL. I think explicit BL across the board outside of like Anime Festa adaptations. Literally in the past 24 hours of me shooting the last video and now this video, we got like the official Anime Festa announcement of Ate Uma, I think is its name, getting its anime adaptation, so shout out to timing. In terms of TV anime, we haven't had as many like explicit feeling the feelings and like showing more physical expressions. Like from what I understand of Sasamiya is like they literally like pine the entire time, they maybe hug a few times and then kiss and it like pans out on the kiss. Like the last episode or whatever. And like Given was also a thing where it's like they had feelings like somewhat throughout the entire story, and like we got flashbacks of like Yuki and Mafuyu like having sex or whatever. Uenoyama kisses him in like the second or last episode. And so like a lot of the BL that has been coming out, there's no like physical initiation of things, which is something that I personally have missed in terms of BL anime adaptations being done. Like everything is more so like, oh, I have feelings, and like literally it's just about them having feelings. Like I'm pretty sure majority of the adaptations have been like 16 plus BL, what people in the West would call shonen ai. Again, in Japan, it's the BL is just classified by like the age restriction. It's either 16 plus, which is like it can have sex in it, but sex is usually like cut to black, like under sheets, like you don't really see much. You definitely don't see even the censored whereas like 18 plus is like the standard, like they I feel like we've had, like, in my opinion, way too much 16 plus BL anime adaptations over the course of the past few years outside of Anime Festa doing the thing. I enjoy plenty of 16 plus BL. I enjoy, like, most of the, I would say, maybe not most. I enjoy some of the Anime Festa BL anime adaptations that get done. But, like, this specific niche, I feel like, has been missing for a while. And people will probably say, it's for the better, progress, blah, blah, but I disagree. If we only get, like, 16 plus BL anime adaptations for TV going forward, like, I'm gonna be pissed. I might become anti-BL. Just kidding. It's dramatic. But, like, I don't think it's actually progress. Because, again, like, most people, I feel like, don't understand, like, where these stories are coming from and what they're trying to portray. Ultimately, I miss the staples of traditional BL. It was nice to revisit them in 10 count, and I would hope we would get more anime adaptations of stories that would have these tropes going forward. Again, I'm not too privy to like the ones I mentioned earlier that are coming out, I think, this year. I would hope that we would get more like 10 Count-esque, Dakaichi-esque, Jinjuro Matsuga, Sekaiichi Hatsukoi, Love Stage, Gravitation type stories going forward still. But TBD, who knows? Maybe we're on this cherry magic bullshit going forward, Sasami of who knows? We'll find out, won't we? The 10 count aspect of the story kind of became like a non-factor very early on, which was kind of funny. But like, this is not the first story to like have its story set up on like this concept, which then like relates to the title and then like is not really a thing. One Piece! Where the is the One Piece? You know what I mean? Like, Bleach! Where's the Bleach? Just kidding. At the same time, like, for the sake of discourse, like, nauseating discourse, that it's probably for the best that the actual 10-step program wasn't actually followed through, because I feel like it would have been perceived to the more, like, overreactionary types as being like, oh, this is like a guide for how to coerce a misophobe into dating you. And so like part of me is glad that it just kind of went off the ropes. We learned throughout the course of the story that Kurose doing this is not just to coerce, like even at times he cuts himself off from Shirotani because he realizes and recognizes that he's in love with him. It's interesting because the story, I swear from like the synopsis makes it sound Kurose is like Shirotani's doctor, so there's like a power imbalance here, but it's literally like two guys meeting on the side of the street and one deciding to help the other like with what he does as his job, but he's not being paid for it. There's no power imbalance here in that aspect. So I'm kind of glad that like, even though like that was non-existent in the first place, that the 10-step program kind of fell to the wayside simply because we're on the 10-step program because we're in the professional status of this, even though this isn't an actual like doctor and patient situation, like it's approaching it in that way. And then like as it goes, like, okay, then it's just kind of all over the place because that's kind of like what figuring shit out is in like an informal setting would be anyway. So I kind of like that it went in that direction. It was like definitely like not as I expected it to be. Overall, definitely like not as freaky at all either. Like it kind of like comes into like, oh, he has a fear of germs and then like they're gonna enter into a relationship, but it's like fondles him through his clothes and there's like a small at some point and like they have sex and like he ties up his with like a which was an interesting choice. It just was overall not as freaky as I kind of thought it was gonna be, and just overall not as as I thought it was going to be either. It's not necessarily a good or a bad thing. It's kind of a bad thing. I would say it's still a net neutral thing. It's a good looking art style, but again, I wasn't attracted to either of these characters. One character I was attracted to, but I wasn't attracted to either of these characters. So them having sex is just kind of like me observing them having sex. In terms of like being drawn to the story or not, the backstory with Nishigaki and Kurose from his youth, I was really drawn into that shit. It was kind of reminding me, quite frankly, of Under the Green Light, which I'm catching up on the second season now. So in that aspect, it was like, call him potato. I was very much more enthralled in like whatever was going on there with Kurose's backstory than anything going on with Kurose and Shirotani. I enjoyed this story. There was emotion behind everything going on in their story. I definitely enjoyed it. But that whole backstory, I was like enthralled. I was like, yo, and then they reconnected, and he's old, and Nishigaki is like older and hot now. Like, oh, lost potential. Good thing I have Under the Green Light to satiate me with that. Mikami in sales, which I will say, I was very much side-eyeing him because he's in sales. If you've ever worked an office job, you know the people in sales are often despicable. They're often very weird. Literally one time, like when I worked in an office, like I was literally sitting at my desk doing marketing things on spreadsheets and then some guy from sales like came around and like was standing behind me and like trying to look under my desk, and I'm like, hello, can I help you? And he was like talking about like my shoes, like mind you, these are some shoes I bought at like on sale at like famous footwear, like they're Nikes. Like I don't know what the you think I don't see anything beside my size and the color, and I'm like, I'm good. He starts talking to me about like sneaker talk, and I'm like it's just like the invasive nature, like the that would have been a cold pitch or whatever. It wasn't a cold sale. I didn't even know it. When Mikami first showed up, I was like, red flags everywhere. He's gonna be a romantagonist. What was interesting about this story, again, that like the only romantagonist in this was Ueda, but she was like definitely not a factor. Like there was no, like a genuine romantagonist, in my opinion, is a character that not only is coming in to potentially disrupt the relationship, but also is a character that either the seme or the uke views as a threat, but also is most likely attracted to either the seme or the uke, and like they maybe do or don't have a chance. Because I'm thinking like the romantagonist in like a Junjuro Mantika where like they didn't have a chance because like Misaki is still figuring things out, but the only reason they have a chance is because they're nice to him. So it's like they're almost in a way being led on by Misaki or whatever. Sekaiichi Hatsukoi, like there's probable cause for like Yokozawa being a romantagonist because Yokozawa has had a past somewhat relationship with Saga Senpai, Masamune. I forgot forgot his name. And then, like, that's a plausible potential thing with Ritsu, and Ritsu is figuring out his relationship. Like, there was no character like that in 10 count, which surprised me, because I thought Mikami was gonna be it, because Kurose kind of treated him that way, and also kind of treated Ueda that way, but it was very surface level jealousy. Like, there was no tangible, like, feeling for Shirotani from either of those characters. Although one had a thing for Kurose, but, like, Shirotani was not even paying attention. He was too traumatized to pay attention to Ueda having a thing for Kurose. Mikami, first of all, was probably the hottest character in the story for me personally. Mikami and Nishigaki. There we go. 12 count. Or whatever the spinoff would be. That would be great, because then it's like Mikami meets Nishigaki because, like, work reasons or whatever. And then Mikami has to work for him, like, in sales or something. And then Mikami, having, like, dealt with Shirotani and being tolerable to his condition, like, would be able to maneuver through Nishigaki's position. And so, like, you know, like, the story writes itself. I know Takurai thinks he's working on something else, but we'll talk about the ending in 10 count follow-ups at the end of this. Shirotani overall was not annoying. I thought Shirotani was going to be annoying based off of Six Lovers, but that was very much not the case. I found him to be a very sympathetic character. I found him to be generally net likable, definitely sympathetic about his condition and how it affects him and, like, everything going on in his life. We'll talk about the overall message of this and, like, his backstory in a second. But one thing I found funny about him is that he would have, like, monologues, like, internally about things. It seemed, like, very, like, dramatic and, like, romantic, and then what he would be saying was, like, not that. Like, Kurose, like, was leaving, and he was like, once he leaves my room, I want to disinfect it with alcohol. Like, not the direction I thought I was gonna go. Kurose I found to be net likable and not overbearing. He was a lot more, like, just net, like, neutral, like, kind of just pushing things along, but not, like, in a forceful way. And I can like a forceful way. But here it wasn't that, which is surprising, because I thought it was gonna go in that direction. Again, just based off of, like, what little I knew about the premise and, like, kind of how his personality in Six Lovers was reminiscent of other characters with that kind of straightforward, I do what I want, I get what I want kind of personality. So I kind of expected that to be Kurose, which is a personality I can be for or against depending on how hot the character is. And Kurose I wasn't fully attracted to, but him not having, like, an overbearing personality, being jealous at times, but not overall being like egregious about it was a surprise, and I would say a net positive surprise based on the character and, like, what they are. So the overall message, I thought it was fascinating that the story kind of flipped, because the story starts off with this idea of, like, Shirotani doesn't want germs on himself, but then as the story goes, we very much learn that it's not about Shirotani not wanting germs on himself, it's about Shirotani finding himself to be dirty and him not wanting to infect others. I thought that flip was incredibly fascinating. I started to see, like, inklings of it when we started to see things, like, with the father or whatever, and, like, the backstory and whatnot, and I was like, oh, okay, or, like, him saying things about, am I dirty? Or, like, he said dad at some point. What did he say? He said, I'm sorry, dad. I was like, it's a Sanu moment. No, Yunso. But I just kind of generally had a feeling, like, by the point of that time, I was like, oh, yeah, that's kind of what it is. Obviously, here, it's, like, very different context than killing stalking. It was interesting to, like, explore misophobia in that aspect, and it wasn't just like, oh, he's afraid of germs. His being afraid of germs is that he was always drawn to his father, and, like, his father always said, like, oh, when I touch your head, like, I can read your mind, and his dad said that, like, playfully, like, his dad was definitely not in the wrong about that, but then that connection being him believing it that way, and then seeing his father start to have with Ueda, and then Shirotani being turned on by that, and, like, having conflicting feelings about that, and then worrying that, like, if his father touches him, that his father will learn, like, how he felt about things inside, which, again, like, it's a lot of hormones, and, like, unsure feelings, and the idea of comfort. Like, I don't believe that Shirotani was displayed in a way where he actually showed genuine sexual interest in his father. It's just the idea of Ueda, like, a person having sex, and, like, that being with someone that you have comfort with, like, being a trigger, because it's, like, traumatizing of, like, am I sexually attracted to my father, and I don't want him to know that, and, like, stuff like that. So it's a lot, and then, like, that trauma just, like, compounded. He never dealt with it properly, and so that's where his misophobia really came from. But I found it was interesting to have that, like, kind of reversal of, like, it's not about him worrying about being dirty from other things, it's about him worrying about dirtying everybody else and everything, and he worries about people touching him, because if people touch him, then they'll, like, know about the true him, and, like, him having a lot of internal shame and stuff like that. So I really enjoyed the story exploring all of that. This complicated sense of, again, shame and affection in puberty. It makes sense. Teaching self-love in a really roundabout way. It, like, essentially ends as the relationship, like, truly begins, which is interesting, because a lot of BL, like, they get to that point and then they keep going, but this just kind of ended as soon as they've, like, okay, now we have the new 10-step plan, like, what 10 things do you want to do to me? Or do you want me to do to you, or whatever, which is, like, a total interesting premise for, like, a follow-up or a spin-off or, like, epilogue chapters, which never manifested, but it is what it is. Also, found it kind of strange, though, that they never really revealed to each other the reasons for their, like, respective trauma and motivations, because they both know that going on with each of them. Shirotani can tell there's something going on with Kurosei, and Kurosei can tell as his, like, unofficial psychologist that there's trauma behind, like, his mesophobia and why Shirotani is the way he is. But it's interesting that they never flat out explain it in detail to each other, because usually, like, there's some sort of opening up situation. It was more of just, like, them being happy to get to each other and, like, deal with their trauma and, like, being in love with each other. So I thought that was kind of fascinating. Also really never got no deeper explanation of, like, Shirotani and his father. Like, he calls his father in the end, but we never really learn, like, again, what happened to Shirotani's mother, what was going on with Ueda, like, was that ever confronted with his father? Like, probably not. Overall, 10 count, I give an 8 out of 10. Net enjoyed it. Would love to see an anime adaptation one day, but again, at the same time, like, I can understand why this adaptation was first postponed. Don't understand why it was canceled. Maybe one day we'll learn it, maybe we won't. But there are aspects of this that I'm glad we didn't have to see on screen. Also kind of glad this probably wouldn't be in BL Discourse, because again, if it's not Sasamiya levels of, like, we're barely platonic, then people usually are here for it, but it is what it is. But that's everything. Have you seen 10 count? Did you enjoy 10 count? Seen 10 count. None of us have seen 10 count. 10 count is canceled! But let me know your thoughts on 10 count in the comments below. Would you be here for a Mikami and Nishigaki spinoff? Because I absolutely would. I absolutely would. So obviously, I haven't been here for a while. What if I've been doing stuff exclusively on Patreon? Head over to my Patreon or become a channel member if you want to see my 2023 wrap-up video. I made it Dramatical Murder themed. Basically, it's just me doing a Q&A. I do a collection tour of my anime figure collection and merch collection. Overall, talking about my feelings as a content creator after 2023, suffering from burnout and, like, being ready to do shit again now in 2024. I also did anime awards for 2023. The best anime, some of the worst anime, characters, all kinds of different categories. Better than Crunchyroll, at least in my opinion. Also, if you're curious about what seasonal anime I'm watching this season and how I feel about it, head over to my Patreon to listen to the 3-episode ruling podcast, where I review seasonal anime 3 episodes at a time and give you overall my opinions on all the anime that I personally am watching and might be doing videos on down the line. Check the pinned comment below, because there is going to be a GoFundMe for the voice actor for Goro from Camp Buddy Scoutmaster season. A family member has passed away and they're trying to get all that figured out, so make sure to click that GoFundMe and donate to it if you can. Also, Palestinian relief for donations will be in the pinned comment as well, so make sure to donate to that if you can. But that's gonna be everything for this video. Fujoshi February is kicking off officially now. Watch my AMV if you haven't. I'm very proud of it. Shout out to anybody who's watched Sekaiichi Hazukoi and gets the reference. The next video I'm not going to say what the next video is, because I feel like every time I say what the next video is, I pressure myself. But I'm saying the next video might be on a seasonal anime, or it might not be. You will just have to wait around, subscribe, bell, notification, blah, 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 to find out. Bye!